Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next episode of Executive Edge. It's the LinkedIn Live speaker series sponsored by the Office of Executive Education at the University of Georgia Terry College of Business. My name is Jason Parrish. I'm the Associate Director of Learning Solutions at the Terry Executive Education Center here in Atlanta. And I'll be hosting these lunchtime discussions with corporate thought leaders and UGA faculty on select Wednesdays throughout the year. Even though we've decided to step up from behind the computer today, I did want to remind the audience that we are monitoring the chat. So please feel free to drop your questions in there as we go along. I'll be watching for those, and we do encourage you to participate. So with that said, just today we are excited to bring you a discussion on the art of business development. Here to shed some light on the subject, I have with me in person, which is a nice change, Joe Cronk. Joe is first and foremost a UGA alum. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
But most importantly for today, he's also a seasoned practitioner with decades of experience building relationships, working with clients in all types of industries to accelerate their growth objectives. Welcome, Joe. So just to start off, thanks for joining us. And why don't we start off by hearing just a little bit more about your background and particularly about your latest venture, Rainmaker Partners.
Well, thank you, Jason, and I'm honored to be here at the Terry Executive Education Facility. Here with Jason in one of my favorite rooms. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But thanks everybody for your attendance, and you get bonus points for asking really good questions. So send in your questions early and often. So Jason and I have prepared some content. We'll be more than happy to just drive through it. We are not going to present slides. We're not going to knock you over the head with PowerPoint. We want this to be a discussion. Rainmaker Partners is a growth acceleration firm that I launched in 2008. We help clients of all sizes and all shapes and all industries accelerate their growth objectives. And we've worked with high-tech CEOs, not-for-profits, professional services, strategy firms of all kinds that are seriously interested in growing their revenues, their relationships, and their rainmakers at a faster pace. We partner with clients in really three ways. And feel free to look at the website. It's www.rainmakerpartnersinc.com. But fundamentally, we provide consulting services to our clients where we help them with driving their go-to-market strategy or their growth strategy or implementing world-class key account programs, stuff like that. We also have a series of leadership retreats. Right now, we offer 6 of them. Things like thinking like your clients or leveraging your network, which you're going to hear a little bit more about, or hunting big game, harnessing the power of your board. And these are very popular hour and a half retreats. Often clients ask us to do lunch and learns with their leadership teams. And then we provide coaching around business development and training similar to the work that I've partnered with Terry here in Atlanta. So that's a bit about Rainmaker Partners.
So Joe, as mentioned, you've got decades of experience. So let's hear a little bit more about your background and your ties here to Terry.
Well, thank you, Jason. I am a proud University of Georgia Business School grad. I got a business degree in management science. My first role was as my kids like to say, you were a coder, but I worked for a large corporation as a banking systems analyst, as a COBOL programmer, and did that for 2 years. I was getting a graduate degree at night in finance and marketing. I moved into consulting with the same company and did that for 2 years, traveling around the United States doing very challenging banking systems implementations, and was fortunate to be a client of a wonderful company called Pricewaterhouse Consulting. So when I finished my MBA, I joined PW, was there 14 years the first time, and was hired to be typical, consultant, billable hours, traveling, etc. But through the grace of God, after my third week, I sold a strategic plan to the CEO of a public company, and my career changed forever. I continued during the first 14 years with Pricewaterhouse which became PricewaterhouseCoopers, which spun off to be PwC Consulting, to pioneer business development, and have done all kinds of sales and marketing, pioneering, productization, and it really tied it all to a company strategy, all the time managing big clients like Coca-Cola and UPS and Delta, et cetera. So I really found my niche, and I'll talk a little bit later about the importance of finding what you're good at and finding what you love, and was fortunate that I did. Along came Big Blue in 2002, and they bought PwC Consulting. So I went over to work for IBM, and I spent 4 years there managing the AT&T services business. One of the board members at PricewaterhouseCoopers did an excellent job of the alumni program and kept in touch with me. And I was invited to go back a second time to PwC to lead sales and marketing for Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. I was the lead on UPS again. And what I really did was drive a transformation program on delivering their state-of-the-art go-to-market strategy. It was a very comprehensive program. And effectively, Jason and folks, what I did was take the best practices, the learnings from all those roles and all those companies, and create a company called Rainmaker Partners in 2008. I ran Rainmaker for 2 years, had 12 great clients. The 12th client was a company called Alvarez and Marsal. After about 6 months of working with them on their growth, they asked me to meet their CEO, and he offered me a job and said, pick your clients, keep your company, pick your clients, and help us with our growth strategy. So I joined Alvarez and was an equity partner there for 11 years. I was thrilled to lead the University of Georgia recruiting, and have hired a ton of brilliant Terry grads who are now A&M consultants. I originated 30 clients from around the world, and I led the client relationship training program for 8 years, where we graduated 250 clients. I am still involved with Alvarez. I'm a senior advisor to them, and a little over a year ago, relaunched Rainmaker Partners. As far as Terry, I am a proud Bulldog. I mentioned I led the A&M recruiting. I've done two Terry talks. I've been involved with the Terry CFO roundtable here in this facility for 11 years. I'm on the Terry alumni board, business school alumni board, and I'm part of the team that drives the Terry Third Thursday program. So my Bulldog roots go deep, and again, I'm thrilled to be here today.
We appreciate your support too, Joe. Thanks for that. And
hold on, I meant to say, I can't say enough about this program, what Linda Reed has done, Jason, what you and Mary and the rest of the team. If you're not plugged into this program, you need to get plugged in. They provide all kinds of amazing education and value to all of our alumni. And I really think you should get plugged in. Part of what Jason and I are going to tell you is this is the first step in putting together a certification program for a business development training program. And Jason, let me hand the microphone back to you.
Yeah, so this is the kind of the first step in something we're working with very closely with Joe on, developing a program for business development professionals to really hone those skills. And so, certainly those of you that tuned in today, we will follow up with more information. But if you follow us on our LinkedIn page, we'll be rolling out more information about that as we go as well. But we certainly will welcome your questions about that, once we wrap the program here too. So just starting at the top, Joe, what would you say is the single most important principle in high quality business development?
So, Jason, you're going right for the secret sauce. I like it.
Yeah.
So, good question. I have probably been asked that question thousands of times by clients, by peers, by friends, and I'll boil it down to 3 principles. Sounds easy, but it's hard. But at the end of the day, the best business development and Rainmakers are people that develop relationships based on trust that drive value. And I and others have proven that over and over and over. That's what clients want. In fact, people buy from people they know and trust before they need to buy. And that's an important step along the way. I'll bolt on another phrase I learned about 35 years ago. It was a Zig Ziglar motivation phrase. And I firmly believe this, and I'm sure many of you do the same, but to get what you want in life, you got to help enough other people get what they want. And it's a truism, and it works in business development and it works in life. I'll add one little kind of extra. There was a book that was published several years ago that studied the success in life and in the business world of givers and takers. And it was scientifically proven that the people that were givers were more successful financially and professionally than the people that were takers. So that's the secret sauce and the most important set of principles. So relationships based on trust that deliver value.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so let's expand on that a little bit and talk a little bit more about the importance of building your network to help generate new business.
Well, I think most people on this LinkedIn Live are familiar with the importance of building a network. So I will kind of spin through my thoughts on this, and hopefully you can pick up a nugget or two that'll encourage you to continue to build your network. But I know in my career and lots of folks I've worked with, building a network is almost the number one way to drive opportunities and build a pipeline and sell work or sell projects. And by that, it's kind of real simple. We all have networks. Everybody has some set of networks. You have a family. Hopefully you have some friends. You probably live someplace. Hopefully you work someplace. Maybe you worked someplace before or a couple places. You went to school somewhere. You're probably involved in some kind of community activity, or you go to some religious institution, or if you have children, maybe you coach, or maybe they're part of a school or a band or some sports. There are all kinds of networks. And what I'm advocating is you go through and you list out all your networks. And when you have that list, you prioritize them. Which are the ones that are the most powerful networks in terms of the ability to deliver business development opportunities? And once you prioritize those, double click on the names of those networks and see who you already have relationships with in each of those networks, and force rank the relationships within each network. And then test yourself. How well have you managed and maintained contact with those relationships? Are you keeping a meaningful cadence? And each time, are you delivering value to them as opposed to telling them what you're doing? I'll give you an idea here that I'm sure some of you do. I'm pretty positive you're all on LinkedIn. But a couple times a year, I sort my LinkedIn alphabetically by company and by last name and just go through it. And I'm amazed, especially given the pandemic of the last 2 years, how many people have changed jobs. And even in my situation, people that I have not kept up with, called them, congratulated, reconnected with them. So it's important to inventory your network. It's also important to continue to build your network on a daily basis. I know we're all busy, but you only have so much time. So it's key that you prioritize who you have in your network, who you're spending time with. You only have so many lunches or cold beers or golf or whatever it is you do with your folks in your network. So prioritize your networks. Then when it gets really interesting is, especially when you're getting a little further along in your career, you'll start to see what I call intersecting networks. So you live in a neighborhood, you look at the directory and you notice that there's two people in there that happen to go to the same church that you do. So you see them at church. And you also notice that their kids go to the same elementary school as yours. Or maybe one of them is on the same soccer team or ballet group as your daughter. Those intersecting networks provide an opportunity to have what I call affiliation with people. They see you more often. They see you in areas outside of business. They're more likely to affiliate with you, to talk with you, and to open up with you. And it's perfectly fine to let them know what the greatest company is that you work for and what your value proposition is, such that they may be a future client. So it's a key part of networking. The next piece, which I developed back in 2008 and 2009 as one of the primary kind of principles of Rainmaker Partners is developing Rainmaker networks. And it's 4 things: people that know and like you, people that clearly understand your value proposition, people that also have large networks, and people that will advocate for you. And we can't have enough Rainmaker network clients, or I like to call them clients. So that's an aspirational networking goal and an objective. Now, all this sounds like work. Actually, it's an extremely effective tool to generating revenue, developing relationships, building your network. Now, there's a wonderful attorney in Atlanta whose name is John Yates, and most of you probably know John. He is almost perfected the business development art and the legal. And there's a podcast. If you Google John Yates podcast, he has put together a wonderful series on building your digital business friendship. And I would highly encourage you to check it out. Have any questions coming in yet?
We do. So we've got one from Matt here. Joe says,
Hey, Matt.
what are your thoughts on Maslow's hierarchy on selling professional services?
So Matt's an accountant, and he's trying to hit me with a hard one here. Thanks, Matt. So, I guess at the bottom of Maslow is survival. And I think a lot of people have been trying to do that the last couple of years. I think, most of us have figured out how to generate business remotely, how to have, limited safe interaction. But I think the business development hierarchy for Maslow lines up very much with his original hierarchy. There's Mark Stoven. Hey, Mark. Mark's a great partner that I worked with for over 10 years and building a city park here in Atlanta and raising a lot of money.
So Mark's asking about what book or books have you gifted most often that you feel are most relevant to developing strength in business development?
I'll tell you what, Mark, let me do this. I've got, I don't know, probably 4 bookshelves filled with books that I've collected over the years. I will take a picture of that and I will put the most relevant ones off to the side, and more than happy to send that to you.
Yeah, we can post that on the LinkedIn page too.
Yeah. There's so many. I mean, I go back to the very beginning when I had no experience in business development or sales or client relationship management or account management. The very first set of books I read were Miller Hyman's Strategic Selling, Conceptual Selling, and Large Account Management. And those books and those concepts are still significantly relevant today.
And I'll continue on with some of the questions from the audience here too, but just wanted to kind of go back to your networks a little bit. I know you have some really great client examples, so I was wondering if you could give us a few specific examples of that.
Sure. Yeah. I have lots of client examples. I'm a firm believer in putting yourself out there. That is really, to me, one of the most important concepts of building a network. Put yourself out there. So I'll give one example. In this very room here at Terry, I mentioned the CFO Roundtable. I would attend almost every single breakfast speaker program, built a great network of CFOs, mostly here in Atlanta. And the reason I like that is CFOs, they know where the money is, they have the money, they approve the money, they spend the money, they're involved in strategy, they're involved in M&A. So this is a great network. One particular breakfast, probably 6 years ago, I was at a table. There were 6, 7 CFOs. There was one gentleman who was very shy. He was very introverted. He didn't have much to say. And so after the speaker was done and people were shaking hands and breaking up, I introduced myself and had never met this guy. He and I spoke for a minute, and he looked at my name tag and he said, "I've never heard of your company." And I looked at his name tag and I said, "I've never heard of your company." Well, they were a $15 billion Atlanta headquartered company. And so we agreed to have lunch. At the first lunch, he shared that this wonderful company called McKinsey has done every project in every division for the last 5 years. that there was no chance that we were going to be able to, get engaged here. So I told him, look at the next time you have something really important around the corner that you haven't got to, come to me and I'll tell you if we can get an A on it. We had our second lunch. He brought up 2 opportunities. The first one, I said, that's not us. We're not going to get an A. The second one, we said, yeah, we'd like to pursue that. We can definitely get an A. And he goes, well, give me a proposal. I said, no, we're not going to give you a proposal. If it's that important, you get your CEO and your top leaders in a room for 2 hours, and we'll bring the operators that have the experience that have done this before. So we had our 2-hour meeting, and I asked the CEO, your thoughts? And he basically said, you tricked us. We're more screwed up than when we started this meeting, and I want to get a proposal, and I want to work with you. From that one networking breakfast and that one networking contact, we did 30 projects in 5 years around the world. So it's a great example of putting yourself out there and networking. If we had time, I'd do a second one. Do we have a minute?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Getting fired up here. I think it's important, especially in this town, in this city, that you get involved in some way in the community and find an area where you have passion that you can add value. So I have loved working with the Woodruff Arts Center. Many years ago, I was on a committee. A new CEO came in, and he said, "Well, I'm gonna go raise money at this company right here." And it was a client that I was working with. After the meeting, he said, "Do you know the people?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, let's do it together." So we went and had breakfast. The CEO got a big check. It happened to be a search firm. They got 2 searches. After the breakfast, the CEO said, "Wow, that was great. What do you do?" I said, "Well, I raise a family." And he goes, "No, what do you do?" And I said, I build parks. And he goes, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "Well, I'm a consultant." He said, "Well, I hate consultants." I said, "Well, you're obviously using the wrong ones." So we got together late December, and he called me in January. We've done over 20 projects with that company as a result of volunteering at the community and putting yourself out there. So, Jason, those are 2 real world examples where this networking works.
That's incredible. Yeah. So just to change gears a little bit here. So well, I guess it's related. How important is the brand you represent?
I think it's a critical success factor. And I'm going to get back to a couple of concepts I said before. The brand you represents the values of the company, represents the value proposition to the to your clients. And so if you're not passionate about the company that you're working for, the company that you're representing, the company that you're selling to the marketplace, the market's going to know it. They're going to feel it. They're going to see that you're not committed, that you're not passionate. On the other hand, if you find something that you love to do and you find something that you're good at and you find a brand that you can attach yourself to, you're going to be so successful. And it's likely that you'll be as successful as our #1 Georgia Bulldog. So I do believe that lining up with a high quality brand is a critical success factor.
All right, we'll pivot back to the audience question here. One from Jackson Montgomery here. What advice would you give to those who are just starting to build a business? And what would you say is the hardest things you've learned in your journey? That's 2 questions.
Okay, thank you, Jackson. I like that question because I've learned from some of my journeys along the way. So the advice that I would give to those that are just starting out. So some of these are pretty basic. You need to be real. So you need to have a website. You need to have, a real identity. You need to have a real LinkedIn, all that stuff. You already know all that. The one thing that I would do is I'd take, whatever short period of time and make sure you write out what is your clear value proposition to the marketplace. That's the starting place. If you don't have a clear value proposition, you can be a great salesperson. You can have a great network. You can work your off. But if the market doesn't recognize the value It's not going to go anywhere. So have a clear value proposition. And then the one thing I learned when I first launched Rainmaker Partners in 2008, and I would encourage anybody who's starting a company, go get a client. That makes you real. That makes you relevant. And when other people you're meeting with say, how's it going? You can say, I'm working with this company. It's going great. And here's what we're doing. So that very first client is really an important step. The hardest things you learned in your journey. Well, I think some of the hardest things are some of the greatest things. So, I launched my own business in the height of a recession. Okay. And what I found was running the business, you end up doing everything. And it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. Anytime you have a success, it's off the charts. Anytime you're frustrated, it's just you. So it's a little bit of a roller coaster until you get those first couple of clients, and then things settle down and off you go.
All right. And so moving on here, what would you consider as the art and the discipline of business development?
Good question. So I do think it is, an art and a science. So, people have relationships, they like you, they don't like you. It's based on chemistry. It's based on style. There's a whole lot of art involved. I'll speak more to the kind of the science of it. And I do believe that it's important that you have effective planning in business development. I'll give you a couple of different examples. So one of them is, do you have an annual plan where you put pen to paper or type it up or however you want to do it, where you say, here's the financial objective that we're going to drive to this year. And in support of that, what are the goals that we're going to achieve? Number of clients, number of proposals, number of meetings, number of, networking, number of whatever. Real empirical numbers that you can track throughout the year and at the end of the year. And then what are the strategies that support your financial objectives and your goals? And then you can have a lot of other stuff around, what is your marketing? What is your community? What specific networks are you going to leverage, et cetera. But I think it's important that you have an annual plan. And in my case, every year I would write out my annual plan and I would share it with my senior partner. Now, the first year, there was a bunch of ink on that page and a half. I was thrilled. We were aligned. And from then on, every year after that, it was a very simple process of saying, this is what I'm going to commit to this year. And do you agree? I'm also pretty disciplined in my weekly cadence. I think everybody has to kind of figure out their own process on how they manage their pipeline, their relationships, their contacts, et cetera, whether it's Salesforce or some other technique. But I do think in addition to the annual, you need some kind of weekly business development planning and management. One of the things that I've been fortunate to have enjoyed how to do and to do well is managing key accounts. And I think business development planning trickles down to have an effective key account plan. So it starts with, what are your financial objectives? Who's your team? What are the opportunities you're going to pursue? Who are the relationships? Who has contacts and relationships, and what kind of relationships? And the one nuance I add is, what is our unique strategy for each account? I don't believe every company should have the same strategy for every account. I believe there are different personalities, styles, values, cultures, et cetera. So account planning is another kind of science. And then when you get down to the pursuit level, I get back to the Miller-Hyman blue sheet or strategic selling. I think you should have a plan for, especially for your largest pursuits, to increase the likelihood that you're going to be successful. There's one other, actually there are two other concepts I'll bake in. When you're looking at your planning, I think it's important that you look at what I call the business development continuum. And there are literally dozens and dozens of different ways that you can make it rain. And I think it's important that individuals understand what I call their personal genius. And what is it that you do super well in business development that's going to generate the most revenue? Because Jason, if you try to do business development the way I do it, or I try to do it the way Mary does it, it's not always going to be successful. So figure out on that business development continuum where you want to spend your time and go do that.
All right. And so I heard you mention flipping the model in business development. And what exactly do you mean by that?
So I think a lot of people that are participating in this have already figured out this concept. I was a little slow. I was a year into my consulting world back in 1990. And I spent an hour with the CFO one-on-one of a $15 billion Atlanta company. And I worked for a wonderful company that had 6 major divisions. I was in the consulting division. We spent an hour talking about our consulting services. I got in the car and I'm driving back to the office, and a light went off. You just spent an hour with a $15 billion CFO talking about one of our businesses. Why not represent all of our capabilities? So from then on, I have demonstrated that in my go-to-market and my client interactions. And I've taught people and trained people and coached people and mentored people, represent all of the capabilities of your great companies. And the great thing about Alvarez and Marsal is they have 10 different businesses that, can serve all kinds of different clients, from governmental to commercial to not-for-profit, et cetera. So my point is, if you work for an insurance company or real estate or, whatever the company is, get to know the other businesses and the other people and represent those with the clients in your market.
All right, let's turn back, take a question from the audience here.
Let's go with Caroline.
You want Caroline? All right. Caroline says, what is the most important element of securing repeat business when working with new clients?
Well, thank you, Caroline. Great question. The number one element is that you deliver gold standard value every single time. And often you need to over deliver. And again, that's easier said than done. There are a lot of factors when you are delivering. But folks that are in the business development role, you develop the relationship. It's based on trust. It's about delivering value. And if you don't deliver that value, everything the business development person did, it doesn't really matter. Your company has to deliver. There are lots of other, but that's kind of the top answer on the board.
Okay. And then also a question here from Mary, which we kind of touched on this a little bit, but without revealing any confidential information. I love when it starts with this. Can you tell us about a project that you are most proud of in your 30-plus career and how you leverage your network to make it a success?
Excellent question, Mary Liz. All right. So I have lots of examples. I'm going to pick one of the hardest projects I've ever been involved in. And so I was going downtown to a park board meeting and was parking my car, and the then Secretary of State of Georgia walked by, and he's an old friend, and we exchanged business cards. He then asked me to go to breakfast. We're at the OK Cafe, and he indicated an interest in partnering together on a very difficult assignment. So it was a 30-year-old relationship that I had not kept up with. And through the grace of God, we got hired to do over a year of very difficult work that resulted in a very significant turnaround of this organization. So don't know if that answers all the components of your question, but that was probably one of the hardest projects I've had in the last 10 years. Thank you for your questions. It's a lot more fun answering your questions.
Okay. So what would you say is the best lead generation technique?
So again, delivering gold standard work and then having people refer you into other businesses. So typically, if you're working for senior executives, they have pretty big networks. They know important people. And, I call it getting an A on an assignment. I I think it's important that you commit that you're going to deliver value and that you're going to get an A. But I also think it's okay when you're inking the deal with the C-suite or the CFO or whoever the client is. You ask the question, is it reasonable to expect that if you and I get an A in partnering on this project, that you'll be, willing to recommend us to other folks? And every single time they say absolutely. So I think word of mouth has always been critically important. And I will also tell you, Atlanta may be 6 or 7 billion people, but if you don't do gold standard work, word travels very fast in this town.
Very true. So tell us a little bit more about what you mean by cross-selling.
Well, I think I spoke a bit about that a minute ago. Jason, if it's okay, I want to back up to the lead generation question, because I have a couple ideas for you that may work for you. And I don't know if you've been doing this, but when I work with clients and companies and leadership teams that are trying to identify how to improve their growth strategies, one of the exercises I encourage them to do is called looking in the rearview mirror. For the last 5 years or the last 10 years, what were your biggest clients? What were the biggest projects? And unwind the string all the way back to the very beginning in the initial relationship. Where did that come from? Was it in the community? Was it alumni from a prior firm? Was it, a cold call? But take a look in the rearview mirror. The world is telling you something, and we believe that you can proactively put forth into your business development activities the things that you've learned from looking in the rearview mirror.
Got it. And just checking here to make sure. Let's see any more questions from the audience just yet. So before we, kind of wrap things up here, Joe, is there one meaningful thing or one meaningful piece of advice you'd like to end on for our audience? What would that be?
So I'll get back to the concept I said of putting yourself out there. You have to differentiate yourself from the competitors. You've got to out hustle them. But, find the things that you're passionate about. Go, get involved, volunteer, network and all that. But it's as I demonstrated in a couple of these examples, if I hadn't gone to that breakfast and I hadn't, helped raise money, there's like 50 projects that we wouldn't have got. And so I would encourage you to put yourself out there. The other thing I would say is, I know you're busy. Everybody's busy. We're traveling. Everybody has a lot of excuses. I've worked with a lot of great firms, and I've heard a lot of partners come up with all kinds of excuses on why they can't do business development every day. But you can. And I would encourage you, do some form of business development every day. Stop with the excuses. We all have mobile phones. We all have internet access. We all have laptops, and y'all have very smart brains. So put yourself out there and build relationships every day. And I think you're going to find that your revenue, your relationships, and your rainmaking will continue to grow every single year.
That's great advice. Thank you, Joe. And thank you again for joining us today. We really appreciate it. It's great advice for our audience. And thank you to everyone that tuned in today. We had some great comments, and we really appreciate that. If you are interested in learning more about our executive programs, and as we work to roll out this business development for professionals program here with Joe, certainly follow us on LinkedIn. We post our latest and greatest information there. Connect with Joe and I. We'll be happy to respond to you that way as well. As far as this chat's concerned, you can continue to drop questions into that even after today's event ends, and we'll respond there also.
Jason, let me add, if you're interested in following up, you can reach me at josephacronk@gmail.com or send me a LinkedIn message. And thanks again for joining in. I hope you learned something, and I hope your rainmaking will continue to grow.
It's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.